With youth unemployment higher in Europe, in countries like France, Spain, Portugal and Sweden, I can see why the EU pushed for a youth mobility scheme to help get their youth unemployment figures down. So can the Prime Minister tell the House what impact assessment he has done on his youth scheme for youth unemployment for young Brits, particularly white working class boys who suffer the most? And can he tell the House today the cap he has put on numbers for people coming into the UK? If he can't, this is a bitter betrayal of British youth.
Mr. Speaker, this provides young people in the United Kingdom the opportunity to work, to study and to travel in Europe. It is going to be a capped scheme of limited duration and with visas, something, again, everybody said we couldn't negotiate. We have negotiated. And in relation to her question about what we're doing for young people in this country, she should look to the trailblazer schemes that we set up that are helping young people back into work.
Noah Law.
And successive parliaments have caused unnecessary and at times intolerable damage to our union. So we can recognise the reduction of some checks on some issues. But can he explain to this House why, if the animals and their products that are able to come to Northern Ireland now free of checks are suitable, why is the European Union still intent on banning the very veterinary medicines that those animals take? If standards are the same in the United Kingdom and the European Union, and this Parliament has already decided that the CE markings will be retained, why are products and manufactured goods not part of this arrangement? And will he confirm to this Parliament that it is his intention as Prime Minister to rid Northern Ireland of the Windsor framework and get rid of the barriers within our union?
Well, can I thank him for his question? As he will know, the SPS agreement that we have negotiated is good for Northern Ireland because it means that the current SPS agreement for Northern Ireland now is complemented by and comes up against the agreement for the UK as a whole, and that will be a huge step forward for Northern Ireland, which I know he cares about and others care about and I care about, and it is amongst the advantages of the SPS deal that we have struck. On the question of vet meds, I do understand the issue and we're working to resolve the particular problem that he has set out, and he's right to do so, but we're working to resolve that. I think we're in a better position to resolve it by cooperating and coordinating with the EU, which is what we are doing. On the Windsor framework, it is important that we implement the agreements that we have in place, because the blunt truth is nobody will make further agreements with a country that walks away from the agreements they've already put in place.
The most pernicious part of this deal is dynamic alignment, by which we become an automatic rule taker from the European Union. Labour have been briefing journalists. We have an opt-out from that. I've read the document in detail. We don't. And besides, the ECJ is the ultimate arbiter in a dispute. It is, so the EU will always win. Why, Prime Minister, when the British people voted peacefully and democratically to leave the European Union, have you surrendered that right and made us a rule taker to the EU once again?
I'd forgotten about some of the nonsense that's spouted. Just on the question of how the rules are made, they will go through a parliamentary process in this House. In this House. We are already aligned. We are in alignment. We are just not getting the benefit of it. This gives us the benefit which will be counted in the business jobs and bills that we can deal with this. And in relation to an independent arbiter, there's independent arbitration where there's disputes in this agreement. They all know this. Every trade deal has an arbitration clause to deal with the settlement of disputes. All trade deals have that, including all the trade deals that they have negotiated. on the question of the ECJ, if there's an issue of European law that needs to be referred by the independent arbitrators to the court, they then give a ruling on the interpretation. It passes back to the arbitrators to make the final decision. That is how trade deals work. But I do understand their new policy. Their new policy is against any trade deals. That's never been the Conservative Party policy before, but it's good that we've got clarity now.
In Boston and Skegness, my fishermen are furious that the Prime Minister has surrendered the fishing industry, and my constituents are furious that you've surrendered on freedom of movement and on rule-taking under the ECJ. But there is good news, Mr Prime Minister. Do you accept that you've also surrendered the jobs of many of your backbench MPs at the next general election to reform?
Well, I'll happily explain to his constituents the huge benefits of these deals measured in jobs that will be saved, jobs that can now thrive, bills that will come down. And it is really important for our economy that we have these deals. That is in the interest of his constituents. It's in the interest of the whole country.
If the Prime Minister is right that our food standards are already in alignment with those of the EU, why could we not have negotiated the deal on the basis of mutual recognition of those standards, as other countries have done, rather than open ourselves up to having to alter our standards in line with whatever the EU may decide to change in the future?
That's a very good question he should put to Boris Johnson.
Harriet Cross. Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Our fishermen had been promised, and the EU had agreed, that annual access agreements would be reverted to from 2026. But seemingly, at the 11th hour, the Prime Minister abandoned our fishing communities, our fishing fleets and control of our seas by handing not 3, not 4 or 5, but 12 years of multi-annual agreements of access to the EU. He sold out our fishermen to meet his self-imposed deadline for announcing the agreement. He has shown that he won't stand strong for UK fishermen, so can he confirm that it will be Parliament who have the final say on the fisheries deal, and it won't be ratified elsewhere by unelected officials in Whitehall or Brussels?
Well, Mr Speaker, the simple fact of the matter is, under the agreement that they struck, it was much more difficult for fishermen to sell into the European market. We are making it much easier. That's 72% of their stock. Shellfish can be sold back into the market again, and we've set up a fund for our fishing communities. The alternative, which was to come off the current agreement, then negotiate every year with no certainty at all, is not good for anyone.
After every EU summit, the people of Northern Ireland have been subjected to spin, broken promises, and in some cases downright lies. The Prime Minister today said that the new SPS agreement will mean no more lorry drivers queuing for 16 hours at the border with rotting food in the back, no more needless checks that made the borders trade so hard, even within our own market between Great Britain and Northern Ireland. If what he is saying is true, can he tell me today that the £140 million border post being built in my constituent, spread over 10 acres, designed to carry out the very checks he says are now disappearing, is no longer necessary, and will construction on it stop?
He raises a really important point, and what we do want to do with this agreement is to ensure that we do remove unnecessary checks wherever they are, but particularly we've had in focus the situation with Great Britain and Northern Ireland. And I do want to make sure that we ensure that we have real improvement on the situation on the ground and don't go to unnecessary expense. I do genuinely think for Northern Ireland this was a big step in the right direction. Yesterday we'll continue to make sure that we make progress.
I note the carefully chosen wording of the Prime Minister's statement. Britain is back on the world stage, delivering for Britain, not the United Kingdom. I note that his SPS deal is with Great Britain. That, of course, is because Northern Ireland has already been captured by the EU, subject to its laws and its customs code. And that is why the Irish Sea border remains. Could I ask the Prime Minister, in regard to the SPS deal as it applies to Northern Ireland, is it correct that customs declarations and customs checks will still continue on goods from GB to Northern Ireland, even though they might be SPS goods? Those will still operate.
Yesterday was a step forward in that regard. It does allow us to reduce frustrations and barriers which nobody wants to see. And I can assure them, I genuinely want us to get into the best position we can in relation to Northern Ireland. It mattered to me in the negotiations, and one of the principles we took into them will continue with that work, because I do know how much it matters.